Welcome to this special session. We had a lot of good sessions today and yesterday, but today it's a special occasion. We will be discussing how this new regional order we keep talking about, the changing, the multilateralism, the polarized world, and what are the impacts on the Middle East. The Middle East is going through a crisis and at the same time undergoing major strategic recalibration. What does it mean for the future of the Middle East? And for that job, we have a great panel, distinguished guests. The organizer managed to line up, I cannot think of any better guests than the ones that we have today. Even if I ask AI to come up with names today to introduce and recommend guests, they wouldn't have come up with such a great panel. And I will ask each one of the panelists to speak for 3 to 5 minutes, and feel free to disagree, to engage. It's not a monologue. I want a lively discussion. And then at the end, if we still have time, I would like to open the floor to Q&As. And please join me in welcoming our distinguished guests. Thank you very much. I would now ask Gina to please give us her views on the subject of this session.
Thank you, Muafak, and to those who have arranged MEDays, thank you very much. It's been an extraordinary 3-4 days. On the new Middle East and whether indeed it's new, I would comfortably argue changing as opposed to new. I do believe that there are shifting power dynamics in a way that have not been before. As we watch the media of what's happening, whether it's in West Bank, Gaza, Israel, whether it's the Gulf or the Levant, we do see shifts. We all see the changing relationship between Israel and the United States, a more assertive United States, although not in a consistent manner, and we can discuss that, I'm sure, among the panelists. I think that we see a emergence of a Gulf weight that has not been there before. I do believe Gulf states, particularly Qatar, UAE, along with traditional partners of the United States, of Egypt and Jordan, were absolutely impactful on getting the President of the United States to move forward on demanding ceasefires and putting forward a peace plan. It remains for these emerging power dynamics to keep the President on task. To keep the President on task. We have seen in his foreign policy around the world a lack of consistency, of dependability, and there is an opportunity in these new allies that he clearly values very highly to demand sufficient changes in how the United States conducts its policy in the region to the betterment of all. But it is going to take pressure. I would argue that the balance and focus on Iran has shifted, not in a wildly different way than the previous administration, but because the president is inconsistent, there are opportunities for everyone around the world. Some more obvious because of the way that the president does business and embraces his ego. There are paths to influence, as well as his own personal desires for making peace around the world. There are new opportunities. So I'll say that, not a new Middle East, but new opportunities. And I'll hold there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I ask His Excellency Dr. Samah Shukri, please.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to be participating once again. I think we have to realize that the region although evolving, although there are different shifts in the power structures and in the development of the region, still is a region where conflict festers. Primarily, of course, the Palestinian issue is still unresolved. The genocide war in Gaza and its consequences has left a very definitive mark of dissatisfaction and apprehension in the region. But we cannot discount the developments in Syria, conflict with Iran, Iran's ambitions, and whether it will recede or continue on the same path as has been the case. The situation in Libya, the very tragic situation in Sudan, but it all comes around again to the 8 decades of lack of resolution of the Palestinian issue, the inalienable rights of the Palestinians, and how we move forward. Definitely the current status, at least of the ceasefire, has relieved the international community of the burden, the moral burden of what had occurred, but there is a risk that there is a suppression now of a humanitarian situation that is not as focused upon, that needs immediate attention. But we are also in a positive mood, that we see that there might be as was mentioned, an assertive American position for the first time, which is taking the lead rather than being led by the internal dynamics of the political environment in the United States, or by virtue of the influence that Israeli politics has also in that regard. The plan has components that addresses the issue of Palestinian rights, and it's important that it is not just a matter contained to Gaza, but is a broader application of American assertiveness to resolve the conflict categorically and finally through a two-state solution. The international community has a consensual approach to that. The most recent addition of those who have recognized the state of Palestine. So it is time to move forward with greater emphasis and ambition and resolve the Palestinian issue and create the two states living side by side within the parameters that have been negotiated over the last 30, 40 years. But the resolution of the other conflicts, the situation in Syria is one of importance, how Syria will develop in the coming years, the positions of inter-regional powers like Turkey, how it is going to operate within the region, whether inter-Arab relations will take the direction of cooperation and integration. All of these are questions, important questions that will only be answered through hopefully a relaxation of the current tensions, resolution of the Palestinian issue, so that the region can move on to addressing the needs of its people and its developmental aspirations.
Thank you, Dr. Shukri. Please, before I move to and ask His Excellency Ambassador Zumlot, I have a quick question for you. To what extent do you think the American involvement in the Middle East is indispensable until today? Because it seems the Middle East under President Trump is three Middle East. He cares more where money is, where the resources are, but the traditional issues and the crisis probably they come second tier. How important it is. At one point we thought there is an internal dynamic in the region that is creating this movement that led to the Abraham Accords. Do you still believe American intervention indispensable to any movement in the Middle East?
Absolutely. I think it was President Sadat who said that the resolution of the conflict, there are 99% of the resolution lies within the political will of the United States. And that remains the fact that the United States, being the main international power with its resources, its abilities, its ability to influence, if the political will exists. And I think it's been demonstrated, potentially the ceasefire wasn't at the highest priority to the Israeli government. Was it not for the intervention of the United States, we might have had an extension of this very tragic conflict. And we hope that that commitment will remain and that it will expand not only to deal with the issue of Gaza, but to deal with the overall Palestinian cause in recognition of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people and their long suffering and the principles, the supposed common values of related to human rights, democracy and justice. We hope that that will be the course, and it remains to be seen. I don't think we can speculate, but certainly the involvement and the intensity of that involvement is a new factor that was not existent maybe to the same degree in previous administrations.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Sam Zumblad, please.
Thank you, Muwaffaq, and thank you, the Middays, for hosting us in this significant country and beautiful country, and the network, and being among such a very distinguished panel. I'm very honored. Well, I need not to say much, Muwaffaq and our friends, about how dark, serious the situation is in Palestine and perhaps the region. The last 2 years have shown a level of criminality, a level of disregard to the human life and livelihoods that is unprecedented in modern history and has led to a great deal of damage to everything we know, including the international order, international law, the very basic universal values and how we understood states should interact with each other. But I would like at the beginning to say that as we speak, this situation did not end. We don't have a ceasefire. We have quiet so far. No party wants to declare the end of that quiet, but no one is respecting the ceasefire. The situation in Gaza is still, you have daily attacks. In average, you have 2 children being killed every day in Gaza. With certain days, you have the number rising to 30 and 40. So it is important to remember that the genocide did not end yet. It is also important to remember that what is happening in the West Bank is not less existentially threatening to us, the Palestinians, in every single sense of the world. And you may have been following in the last few days this military raids, the invasion, the destruction of entire refugee camps, the complete severing of Jerusalem, the provocation of the religious sites, the continuation of the theft of land, the summary executions now in front of the world, as you may have seen yesterday in Jenin. But having said all that, I do agree with Jane that we do have a window. We do have a window. It's important to see the half full. And I must say, Jane, it's not half, it's maybe 5% full. But we build on that. You know, Israel may have won militarily. You know, Israel has won militarily. It has a military victory, not just over Gaza, but over the entire region. But certainly, Israel has a strategic defeat. And there is a big difference between military victory and strategic defeat. And what do I mean by strategic defeat? Number one, it has lost the main purpose of its onslaught, its genocidal war on Gaza, which is the ethnic cleansing, the depopulation of Gaza. It did not happen. And having deployed the crime of all crimes, which is genocide, to do that, and you fail, at least that looming existential threat on us is no longer on the table. And it will have its ramifications on the way we and the Israelis will have to think and rethink the conflict. As we speak, there is 7.5 million Palestinians between the river and the sea, and 7.2 million Israeli Jews in the same area. Number two, it has certainly strategically lost a great deal of its legitimacy internationally, and I wish I have much more time to explain to you and to our friends here how much that has been depleting for Israel over the last 2 years. In every sense, negative as in the image among the people of the world, but also positively in terms of key countries taking key steps like the recognition of the State of Palestine, including the United Kingdom only a few weeks ago. And Israel, mind you me, could not have been established nor could have sustained all of its acts without the external factor. So the international legitimacy is paramount here, paramount here. And also in this, the regional dynamics and, changes within our regional order or regional conversations. You may have heard about the conversation between the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and President Trump only last week or the week before. And it is clear that now we are back to the very essence of the Arab Peace Initiative, and we're sticking with it, which is a very important development given what happened in the last 5-6 years. I would want to just end by saying, yes, it's a dark moment, but I always remember Plato when he says that time is more powerful than force. Time is more powerful than force, and we Palestinians do not have the option of a knockout. We don't. But we have time, we have agency, we have political agency, we have cultural agency, we have civil agency, and we have educated the world, and the last 2 years have opened up a great deal of opportunities. We need to continue educating, we need to continue with the narrative, we need to continue with all what we're doing. What is missing, we see many stars aligning right now. What is missing is, number one, an Israeli public that would start shifting. Because when you see that 90% of the Israeli people are with the war on Gaza and the ethnic cleansing, this is very concerning. We have got to work on that. The second star that is missing in this equation is renewing, reasserting Palestinian unity, the unity of our people, the unity of our political system, and the unity of our geography. And that's why we may have issues with some of the latest ideas coming from Washington, because that unity, particularly the unity of representation, is very important. And I believe the commitment for national elections within 1 year is very, very important. With that, I end, and
I have a quick question for you, Ambassador Zumlot. You witnessed history being the Palestinian ambassador in the UK when the UK recognized the statehood. And in the last meeting between the Prime Minister, the British Prime Minister and President Trump, they talked about the Palestinian state and they said, we disagreed. What do you think is the major disagreement between the UK and the Trump White House when it comes to the Palestinian state? What is the sticking point in your views?
Well, the UK is extremely relevant to our situation for reasons that you know very well. Historic, it was the UK that issued the colonial declaration of Balfour. It was the UK that gave away our land without consulting us, that turned us, the native, original, indigenous population of Palestine, into non-Jewish communities, practically speaking, canceling our existence. That colonial arrogance of Great Britain of the time, and then taking control of Palestine as a colonial power and actually delivering the promise of Balfour, which is establishing a homeland for Jews in Palestine. So the significance of that moment is extremely important.
But what's the sticking point? The significance, we know the historical context of it, but what do you think is now the major diversion in views between the UK and its major ally, Washington, when it comes to recognizing the Palestinian state? What do you think is keeping the US from seeing eye to eye with London on this issue?
Well, number one, your question that Trump said we agreed to disagree is not a bad indicator. It's a good indicator that the Prime Minister of Britain did tell President Trump before they recognized that I shall recognize the state of Palestine. And then all that what Trump had to say was we agreed to disagree, meaning that Trump could not stop him, and meaning that it was coordinated between the UK and the US. What is the difference? It's just the political capital here, i.e. the British Prime Minister had to recognize because of the public pressure in the UK, because of the British people, because of the millions in the streets, because of the unprecedented movement in the parliament that went all the way to the cabinet, and it was absolutely unmissable. He could not but recognize the US in terms of the public is not there yet, but definitely we are going in that direction. And remember New York and Mamdani.
Thank you, Ambassador. I have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Amr Moussa. Dr. Moussa, please.
Thank you very much. I wish to start by thanking and commending the comments made by King Mohammed VI on the occasion of the Day of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People and the International Day of Solidarity with the heroic Palestinian people. His Majesty outlined three fundamental pillars that must guide any credible effort towards a just and durable peace. The King, His Majesty, has underlined three basic points. First, preserving the unity of Gaza and the West Bank politically and administratively under the Palestinian National Authority as indispensable components of the future Palestinian state, with East Jerusalem as its capital. The second point stressed by His Majesty was that supporting and strengthening the Palestinian Authority politically, administratively, and financially. The third one is reviving and enabling the Palestinian economy through lifting restrictions on the movement of goods, people, and capital. These, in fact, are not merely Moroccan priorities. It is Arab priorities, and in fact, they have become international priorities to address the Palestinian question and solve the Palestinian problem. I said so because what was said by His Majesty the King, in fact, represents the Arab point of view, collective Arab point of view about a Palestinian state, Palestinian self-determination, Palestinian state within the lines of 1967. Regardless of some details here and there in the Arab politics towards that problem, but there are basic things, basic lines that we all agree on, all Arab countries without exception. That's number one. Number two, you know that a wave of recognition by several European states and others, of course, have come into being very recently, which opened the door for a new page that the whole world stands firm against the liquidation of the Palestinian question, and they insist on the rights of the Palestinians to a state, a viable state, in order for them to be able to join the international community in building a future that has a unanimous, solid cooperation without the violations of international law, violations of the Charter of the United Nations, and aggressive attitudes and criminal practices. The number three, of course, there is a change, serious change of the international situation in general. And there is also a change in this vast area called the Arab world, a change. But this change cannot bring fruits without solving the Palestinian question. It is either the Palestinian question solved in order to open the doors for cooperation, for a new era of recognitions and working together, living together, coexisting, or chaos. The Palestinian statehood is a point that has to be underlined. And I wish to refer to that point as one of the 20 points offered by President Trump, that he recognizes the importance of the necessity for establishing a Palestinian state. Now, I'm not going to discuss whether America has 100%, 90%, less, more or less of the points solving the question of Palestine. But what I know is that we have now a text, 20 points, talking about the radicalization and the non-radicalization of certain positions. Of course, they were interpreted by some Western countries as addressing the Palestinian organization. But I believe they are also addressing certain well-known Israeli trends, politics, and politicians that have shown a lot of disregard to everything, international law, basic lines of good behavior. Therefore, such a point that please change yourselves. This advice is not addressed to the Arabs or Arabs alone, but to the Israelis, and the Israelis, in fact, have to change. Otherwise, there will be no solution. They believe that now they have the support of big powers, support perhaps more powers around the world, but that is not enough. Palestine question is not going away. It will stay until a solution, an acceptable solution, logical solution, lawful solution, in order for the Middle East, in fact for the whole world, to change in the right direction. And I'm not pessimistic about that. We have seen what happened in Palestine because of the Israeli policies in dealing with the occupied territories and with the Palestinian people, something that we as citizens of Arab countries, but we also as citizens of Africa, we as Mediterraneans, we all cannot accept the position taken by Israel that they want to annex the West Bank, they want to annex other territories, and they don't want to recognize the right of the Palestinian to self-determination. I believe not only we in the Arab world, but many other powers. It was clear the general collective stance by many generations in many countries, in many continents, supporting the Palestinian rights to self-determination and to protest against what happened in Gaza, slaughters in Gaza. And as the International Court of Justice has underlined, that there is practices called genocide have been done in Gaza. And by the way, I seize the opportunity to commend what the Republic of South Africa has done. They brought Israel to justice before the International Court of Justice, and I really want to underline once more that South Africa has done the right thing. Finally, I am not pessimistic. I believe that Israel has strategically lost, as Ambassador Zamrud has just said. Perhaps they won, of course, with all this massive support, won the military side of the conflict, but they have lost strategically, and they know now that it is impossible for them to live as an occupying power for more years. They have to rethink. Whether they are able of rethinking, I believe they are within the Israeli society, political society, that some powers have emerged. They are now calling for negotiations with the Palestinian side. Those powers must come with us. And I called on them in some newspapers several months ago that join us. Let us work together to get the recognition of the Palestinian state and to have a Palestinian state established. This is not an impossible thing. It is possible. It is possible. And I think that we are on the road. The Palestinian state will be established in the next few years. This is the will of the international community, and we cannot just succumb to the will of one country or those that are considered as extremist forces in one country, that is Israel. They cannot do it, and we are not going to accept it, but we are ready, all of us, to live together, to work together. If the other side, if Israel just sits for a moment and thinks, what they are doing, is it logical to ignore the rights of Palestinian people or to occupy their lands and prevent them from having their future achieved as all other powers, all other countries, all other peoples, we have a chance to
Thank
go.
you.
And I think we will succeed.
Thank you, Dr. Musa. Thank you very much. Mike, please.
Thank you. Pardon me. Thank you, Muafak, and thank you to the organizers for this wonderful event. Muafak, I'm going to reveal something to you now that I've never revealed to anyone before. I have a superpower, and my superpower is that I know everything that Donald Trump thinks. And so what I intend to do here is just quickly describe how the Middle East looks from Donald Trump's point of view, and then I'll make a couple of predictions about what he wants to have happen.
And we'll call you up on those predictions next year.
I'm ready. Yeah, as long as you bring me back and give me lots of Moroccan cookies, I'll come back. So Donald Trump, first of all, he wants to settle the conflicts in the region down. I don't think he necessarily wants to solve them. He would love to solve them if he can, but he wants to settle them down for a very simple reason. He's focused primarily on East Asia and on the contest with China. And the conflict in Ukraine, the conflict in Gaza, this, from his point of view, is a distraction in American foreign policy from what our priorities should be. When he looks at the Middle East, he sees it as a contest between the United States and China, and he sees Iran primarily as an agent of China. Therefore, he worked very closely with the Israelis to, I don't know if defeat Iran is the right word, but let's say set Iran back significantly and prevent Iran, at least in the very near term, from getting a nuclear weapon. In terms of settling the whole region down, he wants to settle the whole region down, and he wants everyone to make money together. He has three primary partners. One of them is Bibi Netanyahu, and he is the preferred. He is let's say the closest partner that Donald Trump has, and you can see that that's true just by the number of visits that Netanyahu has had to the White House. The other two are Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia and Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Turkey. And when he thinks about an American order tilting against an anti-American, pro-China Iran, he wants to find an accommodation among those three. That's the number one goal. In doing that, he has a problem that the Turks and the Israelis especially are butting up against each other, primarily in Syria, but not only. And increasingly, President Erdogan is seeing or depicting Israel as the other, as the source of problems in the region, all problems in the region, and Turkey as the solution to them. So this is leading Trump to play a mediating role between the Turks and the Israelis, but also at certain times he's seeing his role as to keep them apart so that they don't butt up against each other. One of the more interesting dynamics that we're going to see over the next year is how successful he is at mediating and buffering. The goal there is the number one goal is to create a stable order in Syria with significant international investment so they can start rebuilding in Syria. He's hearing the same message from President Erdogan as he's hearing from Mohammed bin Salman about Syria. On Gaza, there's no possibility from Donald Trump's point of view of a two-state solution. The two sides are too far apart. It's not going to happen. The best he can hope for is just to settle the Gaza conflict down and begin some measure of rebuilding, just to keep it in a manageable into manageable proportions. he's very much aware of the fact that he's got the two stages to his peace plan. The first stage is all very clear, and it's nearly come to an end. The second stage is very conceptual. It's not clear how or whether Hamas is going to disarm, who's going to disarm it, what the process is going to be, and so on. This all has to be worked out. It'll probably be muddled through. By a year from now, we'll have the conflict settled down, but Gaza is still going to be in a state of disorder. From Trump's point of view, that's okay, because like I say, the key is just to settle the conflicts down. Lastly, with regard to Iran, the key thing there is that the Israelis and the Americans are both in agreement that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. It should not have a nuclear program. And they're also in agreement that Iran's ballistic missile program is a significant threat both to Israel and to the U.S. order. So the question there, the Iranians are probably not going to restart their nuclear program, because Israelis have penetrated Iran to such a degree that if they did, the Israelis would take action against them. The question is whether the Iranians will begin rebuilding. They are beginning to rebuild how significant their ballistic missile program will be. And there we might see a renewal of some of the conflict, at least sporadically, between Iran and Israel. But that's basically, I think, how Donald Trump sees the region.
I have two quick questions for you, Mike.
For Donald Trump.
Yeah. What does it take to keep President Trump engaged and interested in resolving the Gaza and the Palestinian-Israeli thing? And the second question is, you said they see Israel and Iran and Washington, they see eye to eye when it comes to Iran's nuke and when it comes to Iran ballistic missiles. Do they see eye to eye when it comes to the regime change in Iran? It seems Israel has a different take than Trump at this stage.
I'll take the second one first. I think it's a mistake to think that the Israelis want regime change in Iran. I mean, they may go to bed at night and fantasize about it, but that's not their policy. Their policy is no nuclear program, no ballistic missile program that can threaten them, and to weaken their proxies around the region. Netanyahu sometimes engages in regime change rhetoric in order to put pressure on the Iranians. He trotted it out, especially during the 12-day war, because let's say when Iran hit the hospital in Beersheba, he wants to respond and threaten the Iranians and say, we can escalate as well, and we can escalate toward regime change. But in terms of the targeting that they did, they didn't take out targets that were designed to actually destabilize the regime. They took out the gateway to Evin prison in order to signal. That was a signal of an escalatory capability rather than an actual escalation. And one of the reasons that the Israelis are not going to escalate toward regime change is that Donald Trump doesn't want them to. Also, there are steps that the Iranians could take to escalate. They could take out Saudi refining capability. So you notice that the Iranian oil industry was off the list of Israeli targets. Because there was a sense on both sides that there were escalatory capabilities the Iranians had that the United States and Israel didn't want them to take. So there were limits to how the conflict went. First question, I already forgot it was something about Gaza. What was it?
What does it take to keep the president interested and engaged?
So Donald Trump, Donald Trump proposed the peace plan, and he's engaged. This thing is moving forward because Donald Trump is pushing it.
Would he lose interest at one point?
He will. It depends how it goes. Everyone is defining, the Egyptians, the Turks, the Emiratis, they're all defining the process differently in ways that are acceptable to them domestically. But like I said, it's really very conceptual. Who's actually going to, the key question is, who's going to put troops in Gaza and are going to point their guns at Hamas and say disarm. The fact is no one wants to do it, including the Israelis. The Israelis don't want to go and do it. The Egyptians are not going to do it. The Jordanians are not going to do it. The Emiratis are not going to do it. Who's going to do it? So until that question can be answered, there's no way that the second stage is actually going to, I'm not going to say it's never going to, but it will probably kind of fall apart at some point. If it continues, if Trump's pressure continues, that we see some kind of motion forward. I understand the Azerbaijanis have volunteered to be on the ground. Suppose they establish a green zone and a red zone, the red zone being Hamas controlled and the green zone being a rebuilding arena patrolled by some kind of force, Azerbaijani, maybe also Gazan policemen trained by Egyptians and Jordanians and so on, and that continues to go forward, then we'll move forward in that kind of incremental way. But if I'm to put it really crudely, really crudely, and this is a bit unfair, it's a bit unfair to Donald Trump, but Donald Trump wants this to fail as far away in time from his announcement of peace as possible, so that he's not blamed for it.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Paul Salem, please.
Thank you, Mufa, and thank you to the Institut Amadeus. When we talk about Middle East and order, the Middle East doesn't have an order, hasn't really had an order for decades. It's reshifting, it has reshifted, it's in the process of reshifting in terms of power balances, dynamics between players and so on. But an order is still something very far away. When you look at the Middle East, it's really the Arab countries plus Israel, Turkey, and Iran. There's no institution that includes those four sets of countries in any political sense or any security sense, any architecture that would get us there. And that really makes this region, unlike most other regions in the world, which do have a kind of an architecture that at least tries to manage issues. The sources of instability remain very deep and maybe are getting deeper. Some of them are indigenous, the instability of Arab states. We have 3 states in the Arab world that are collapsed: Libya, Sudan, Yemen. Syria is more or less still collapsed, but still has a way to go. And the contradictions of Arab governance and Arab states we saw in the Arab uprisings in 2011, they continue to generate instability and so on. And in the other 3 countries, they have their own internal instabilities. Israel, Palestine, which is effectively one state. You call it an apartheid state, you call it a state in civil war. It is, as we have seen, exporting conflict, exporting instability. The Islamic Republic of Iran has an ideological component and orientation that generates instability. And Turkey, as we've heard in previous sessions, its turn, which was once sort of a model for many of the Arab countries, has turned to a really authoritarian, closed system, which also generates a lot of tension. So there's a lot of instability generating from within the system itself. If we are ever to get to an order, first of all, it has to be a state-based order. That implies that the states that are collapsed, that cannot go on. You have the case of Sudan, where it's effectively Arab countries, kind of fighting a proxy war inside Sudan. You have the case of Yemen, you have the case of Libya, where there are Turkish and Iranian influences in those different countries. But allowing these civil wars to continue and expect the region to be stable is unrealistic. The instability generated by the Israel-Palestine situation, we've talked about a lot. It's a primary generator of instability that needs to be addressed. So we need to get to a state system, but we have a lot of armed non-state actors throughout the region. Part of that is the result of the collapse of states, and hence other players come up. Partly the result of the Islamic Republic of Iran choosing the arming of non-state actors as a policy, and partly as a result of Israeli policy that denying statehood to a people, to an entire people, effectively is going to generate non-state actors, armed non-state actors, and so on. So until we get some resolution to those issues, we're not going to get an order like other regions have. But to be more short-term in how we look at things, obviously over the last 2 years, there's been a tremendous shift in the balance of power. Israel definitely has won a lot of battles, but not strategically more secure, probably more insecure, but has certainly won a lot of battles. And I think a lot depends on how the Israeli government, what decisions it makes in the years ahead. I think the decisions that the Netanyahu government, with its extreme right-wing allies, in terms of really not translating these military victories into sustainable political arrangements, is something that is ideologically based. But I think it makes Israel more secure. It certainly makes makes Israelis less secure, certainly makes Palestinians less secure, and makes the stabilization of the region more unlikely. I think, therefore, in 2026, what happens in terms of Israeli leadership, whether it's through elections or shifts in the Knesset, that the decisions that are made by the next Israeli government or the next Israeli leadership will have a big say, because I could imagine a different Israeli leadership looking at the region, seeing that Israel is militarily very dominant, the Iranian threat has been much reduced and much repelled, that now is a time for Israel to translate these military victories to sustainable political arrangements, which means arrangements with the Palestinians, normalization with Saudi Arabia, which would then open up normalization with other countries in the region. But that requires major concessions to the Palestinians. But that would be a highway to a stable region. But that's up to an Israeli leadership that is different than the current leadership. Obviously, President Trump and any U.S. president would want to go in that direction. The other big question mark in the region is, what is the Iranian leadership going to do? Iranian strategy of the last 30 years has failed. It was a strategy of forward defense, of building militias, Hezbollah and others, to deter Israel, to deter the U.S. from attacking Iran proper. All of that has collapsed by the wayside. Leadership in Tehran is in, I guess, a big rethink about what new strategy they will come up with. But certainly they are unable to deter neither Israel nor the U.S. They are unable to defend Tehran or Iran. Their economy is in shambles. Their water resources are at an end. They realized when they were under attack that the strategy of relying on the East, on China and Russia, did them no good whatsoever. It gave them no way forward. So it very much depends what strategy Iran will pursue over in 2026. So I can imagine multiple futures for this Middle East disorder that we're talking about. One is a continuation of what we're seeing, open-ended wars in the Palestinian areas, in Lebanon, in Syria, and so on, in Yemen, in Sudan. Or I could see a much brighter future where the more positive elements and leaderships in the Middle East and the US and others make breakthroughs in negotiations and pacts and get to a very different future. I think that is within grasp, but we need some changes in strategy and leadership to get there. I will end by mentioning two potentially bright points. Those are in Syria and Lebanon. Those are the two countries that kind of changed their trajectory after the bitter wars of the last 2 years. Syria, the obvious changes that we've seen. President Shara is saying all the right things and has a lot of support regionally and internationally, but the domestic challenges he faces are still very, very enormous and very deep, very uncertain whether he and what he's talking about will succeed. But he certainly deserves both the support and the pressure to stick to the better version of what he talks about, because if Syria succeeds, that will be a very major step forward for the Mashriq and that part of the Middle East. And Lebanon is moving in the right direction. It's not easy. It is dealing with Hezbollah, which is a very major armed force, backed by Iran. It's been there for almost half a century. And it still has about 50,000 fighters between full-timers and reservists. The Lebanese army itself has 50,000 fighters, but they're busy doing all tasks for the country. So the country is moving in the right direction, but a lot depends on if Syria succeeds and if the Lebanese army and the Lebanese state get sufficient support to be able to continue to counterbalance and eventually disarm Hezbollah. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Ramadan, you have your 3 minutes, please.
لا أتكلم بالعربي أنا. شكرا موفق أصحاب المعالي والسعادة. في 8 أكتوبر نتنياهو تحدث عن نيته لتغيير وجه الشرق الأوسط، واستفاد من الدعم الأمريكي اللامحدود حينها تحت مظلومية ما حدث يوم 7 أكتوبر. إلى يومنا هذا نجح نتنياهو بإحداث تغيير جغرافي على الأرض في غزة، في جنوب لبنان، في سوريا. قام بحرب إبادة جعل وعقد مسؤولية المجتمع الدولي بإيقافها على مدى 2 عام، إلى أن أصبحنا نقول شكرا ترامب، لأنه من خلال خطته في شرم الشيخ استطاع وقف أسوأ الأسوأ وعادنا للأسوأ، والأسوأ ما يحدث الآن وما يقوم به نتنياهو، وهي الأجواء الأفضل المفضلة لدولة الاحتلال: استمرار اللاسلم، قتل الفلسطينيين، استباحة أراضي الضفة الغربية، القدس، غزة، جنوب لبنان، سوريا، دون أي تكلفة سياسية. أعتقد أن ترامب قدم الرعاية لإسرائيل ولسياسات نتنياهو بشكل كبير، ومخطئ من يبرئ الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية من كل الجرائم التي يرتكبها جيش الاحتلال بحق كل دول المنطقة وبخاصة الشعب الفلسطيني. لماذا؟ لأن الولايات المتحدة وترامب بالذات أثبت للجميع أنه باستطاعه كبح جماح نتنياهو، والدليل أنه أجبر نتنياهو على وقف الحرب في غزة، كما أجبره في السابق قبلها بعام على إرجاع الطائرات الإسرائيلية من الجو قبل أن تصل لقصف طهران. بتقديري أن الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية شريك مباشر في الاعتداء على حقوق الشعب الفلسطيني، لأنها قادرة على فرض السلام وإعطاء الشعب الفلسطيني حقوقه. ترامب رئيس قوي، ونقول شكرا ترامب لأنك أوقفت المذابح بالشكل التي كانت عليه، ولكنه لم يوقف قتل الفلسطينيين، وهي جرائم ترتكبها إسرائيل إلى الآن. من المقلب الآخر، فقدت إسرائيل شرعيتها، أو فقدت إسرائيل حصانتها السياسية لدى معظم دول العالم وخاصة في الاتحاد الأوروبي. فقدت إسرائيل تعاطف الشعوب الأوروبية بشكل كبير وانقلب المشهد. فقدت إسرائيل حصانتها في المحاكم الدولية وأصبحت تجرم هي وقادتها. وأعتقد أن المكاسب التي تحدث عنها سعادة السفير حسام، وهو له دور كبير جدا في كشف جرائم إسرائيل وتثبيت الحقوق الفلسطينية لدى الذهنية الغربية بالتحديد. نجحت السلطة الفلسطينية بأن تكون ثابتة ولم ترضخ للضغوط التي مارسها عليها الاحتلال والولايات المتحدة وبعض اللاعبين الذين كانوا يريدون استسلاما من الفلسطينيين. الشعب الفلسطيني في قطاع غزة أفشل مخططات نتنياهو عندما لم يهرب، ونشكر جمهورية مصر العربية التي أفشلت مشروع التهجير الذي كان هو المشروع الوحيد على طاولة الرئيس الأمريكي وشريكه نتنياهو. بتقديري أن السلطة الفلسطينية أيضا والرئيس أبو مازن قد فوت الفرصة على المؤامرة الكبيرة على التمثيل الفلسطيني عندما أعلن عن نيته بإجراء انتخابات فلسطينية لتجديد الشرعيات، وهذه كانت طريقة ملتوية من لوبيات إسرائيلية داخل المؤسسات الأوروبية والغربية لتفشل عملية التمثيل الفلسطيني الرسمي في قطاع غزة. اليوم الثاني لقطاع غزة فقط الشعب الفلسطيني من يقرر من يحكم، والشرعية الوحيدة هي شرعية منظمة التحرير والرئيس الفلسطيني والأجهزة الفلسطينية والقوات الأمنية الفلسطينية الشريفة التي تستشهد اليوم في طوباس وقلقيلية وجنين دفاعا عن الشعب الفلسطيني، هي القادرة على حماية الشعب الفلسطيني في قطاع غزة ورعاية إعادة إعمار ما دمرته آلة الحرب الإسرائيلية. نشكر جلالة الملك المغرب رئيس لجنة القدس الذي أعاد على لسان معالي الأمين العام عمرو موسى تثبيته على أن ثوابت المغربية لعملية السلام هي الدولة الفلسطينية، حدود عام 67، الضفة الغربية وقطاع غزة والقدس الشرقية تحت سلطات الشرعية الفلسطينية فقط. لا توجد لجان أمريكية، لا يستطيع أحد أن يفرض على الفلسطيني من سيقوده. الشعب الفلسطيني اختار قيادة فلسطينية شريفة منذ الرئيس الشهيد ياسر عرفات إلى الرئيس الحالي محمود عباس أبو مازن. شكرا للمغرب، شكرا لإبراهيم فاسي الفهري، شكرا لميديز على هذا التنظيم، وشكرا لأصحاب المعالي والسلام.
Thank you very much. I have a question before maybe if we have enough time to get some questions from the audience. But before, I would like to ask Dr. Amr Moussa, the 20 points of Trump that led to the ceasefire and the Security Council resolution recently, we don't hear about the Arab Beirut initiative. We don't hear about 242, 338. Do we have new parameters? Is the conflict evolving into something else right now? New rules of the game?
Well, that is a very good question, Muwafaq. Are there new rules of the game? I think that...
Please, المايك قربوا لعندك.
Okay. Thank you. I think that there are several efforts to do just that. A new dimension, new way to solve that question. But the lesson is there. What happened on the 7th of October, and before that and after that, still carries a message, very clear message, that continuation of occupation or annexation of the Palestinian territories are unacceptable. And if this continues, if this policy continues, there will be a lot of chaos and there will be no new Middle East. So I believe, yes, indeed, there is a new policy and there is also a kind of a new window. I see it in the 20 points of President Trump. If they are really put on the table in an honest way, to take it point by point, and not to be interpreted in favor of one side, which is Israel, at the expense of the other side, which is the Palestinians. We need an honest approach. This is our task in the world of diplomacy, in the world of politics, to talk with President Trump that now is the time to have a practical, acceptable solution to the Palestinian question. If we lose this time, this opportunity, I believe we'll be losing any settlement or any new notion of a new Middle East for so many years to come.
Thank you. Dr. Shukri, I have a question for you, if you don't mind. You mentioned Turkey at one point. Iran has been downgraded as an influence after the bombing of Iran. Iran is no longer the state that used to be 2-3 years ago. Everyone agrees that Iran is weakened. Are you concerned from an Egyptian perspective that that vacuum is being filled by Turkey? Is the Egyptian influence in the region being eroded and Turkey is filling that vacuum?
Not necessarily. I believe the current status of Turkish-Egyptian affairs, the reconciliation that occurred, the degree of coordination between the two countries is a positive development and one that can have an impact on regional stability. Again, I think it is sometimes overstated or presumed that Egypt's role is diminished, but then would it have been possible to have arrived at a ceasefire, to have been continually engaging all of the various components and parties without Egyptian involvement and without Egyptian agreement to and support of the parameters that must remain in place. When Secretary General Moussa mentioned the issue of and your question about the the different parameters. No, I believe that nobody can decrease the importance of international legitimacy as contained in 242 or 338 and the need to uphold international law and oppose the issue of occupation. But what the plan does is deal with a component of the problem, which is Gaza. And here, again, it's important that it becomes more comprehensive in dealing with the overall aspects of the Palestinian cause leading to a two-state solution. Now, Turkey has influence, has ability to impact. It is a NATO member, its relations to the United States, but its regional relations and affiliations are also important. And I think we have to depart from a zero-sum game where only one participant must be predominant if we are to achieve stability in the region. It should be on the basis of cooperation and integration and finding points of convergence that will stabilize the region and help to deflate and to terminate the conflicts that exists.
Thank you very much. I have a question for you also, Ambassador Zumlot. During the peace process and the Oslo process and what came after that, there was something known, the final status talks, the thorny issues, one of them being the statehood. Right now we talk about state, more people, more countries are recognizing the Palestinian state, but we don't have a process towards that state. We talk about state, but no one is talking about viable state. That key word is no longer there. What do you expect? How would you overcome that you talk about state, but you don't have a process towards that state?
Well, first, that's a very relevant question, really, because we need to learn the lessons of the last 30 years of, failing to achieve the desired outcome. Number one, it is important to explain that the two-state solution as a formula was never a Palestinian demand or an Arab demand for that matter. It was primarily an Israeli idea, by the way, endorsed by the international community later on down the line. And then by the late 80s, 1988, the PLO and the Palestine National Movement decided to ally itself with the international consensus. Now, the issue of Oslo, it has several issues, one of which is the lack of reciprocity when it comes to the end game. While the PLO has fully recognized Israel on the 1967 borders in writing, Israel never recognized Palestine as a state. That was a major, major issue with the Oslo process, because then we were at the mercy of interpretations, and then the stronger, more powerful party would always have it their way. Number two, we never agreed to stop the settlements. That was a major, major default. Today, what we're trying to do is to actually do exactly the opposite, reverse the process. We start from the end and we drill backward. That's number one. Number two, we have all the tracks, Muwaffaq. We have all the institutions. All this talk about reform, of course, reform is a Palestinian demand. This is a request of the Palestinian. We need to keep reforming our own institutions, but we have institutions. Legitimate institutions, historic institutions. We have 70,000 employees in Gaza. Who teaches our people in Gaza? It's our teachers. Who are these doctors in the hospitals? It's our doctors. I mean, what these people are talking about, that pie in the sky, stuff that we are on the ground. And we have institutions of law, we have institutions of... So, and indeed, reform means we need to renew our legitimacy. And that's why committing to elections within 1 year of a ceasefire is paramount. But I'm saying all this to say that is exactly the relevance of international recognition and of what Secretary General Amr Moussa just said, accountability. We need to learn the lessons of Oslo, commending South Africa, but not just South Africa, all the process that is going on. And I would disagree about Trump, and Trump wanted to delay it. If Trump can be the man who is seen to have made finally this deal, I think that's the Trump persona. He would like to be the one who actually does things that no other person can. So maybe we need to make sure that he continues believing so. Biden Biden and the Biden administration Biden himself used to say all the good things, all the right things, and does the wrong things. Trump is saying all the wrong things, but maybe we can get him to do the right things. Last thing, I think Trump is way more clever than what we think. I think he's reading the room very carefully, and I would stick my neck out, and I would argue that Trump might be the last pro-Israel president in the US.
Thank you. Mike, I have a quick question for you. You mentioned Netanyahu, the Saudi crown prince, and the Turkish president as the closest allies to President Trump. Any vote, this is not in favor of Netanyahu, 2-1. How do you think Netanyahu would deal with that situation?
Well, it's a problem for him to a certain extent, in that he can't control every aspect of the process on Gaza. But I think if you look at the Security Council resolution, by my reading of it, that's a very pro-Israel document. Starting from the point of view that it doesn't...
Even if it has a mention of a Palestinian state?
It has a mention, but it's also conditioned on reform. I think that was a nod toward the Turks and Mohammed bin Salman, but not much more than that. And also it's time limited, the Security Council resolution, and its authority is going to end before Trump leaves office. So I look at it as a product mainly of the cooperation between Netanyahu and Donald Trump. There's nothing in that resolution that makes Benjamin Netanyahu uncomfortable.
Thank you very much. Our time is up, but I think I can borrow 5 minutes. I would ask each one of you, please, to conclude with the 1-minute remarks after you heard from each others. I'm going to start with you, Gina.
Thank you. I hope that everyone leaves here today understanding the old saying that people will only burden you or treat you as badly as you will accept. And that the nations in this region have more agency than they have used until very recently. Progress on this issue is possible with partners and allies speaking truth, being very clear about their own needs and what they will accept. And because, as everyone has made very clear, we all understand that President Trump wants a win. He does on this issue. He does. He needs to understand what it's going to cost and the fact that he does have it within him to pay. We have seen him in relation with the Prime Minister of Israel do things that presidents before him have not done. We know what he can do. When he said stop war with Iran stopped. We know what he can do. We have to help him do it. And I'll close there.
Thank you. Dr. Shukri, if you have any final remarks.
Just that justice must prevail, that double standards will not be accepted, that there's a rising trend of dissatisfaction and lack of trust in the world order and in international legitimacy, and this will all unravel and create more instability. And if justice is to prevail, then the Palestinian people are worthy of that justice in the creation of their own viable, independent, sovereign state, and thereby we can move forward.
May I recommend maybe the word justice? We used to say just and comprehensive peace. Maybe we can substitute it with fairness. To be realistic.
No, fairness is subjective. Justice is more definitive.
Thank you. Ambassador Zumblot.
Things have changed big time. because we have a new generation of Palestinians, a new generation of the Arab people, including the Moroccans, and I see many youngsters here. Things have changed in the world. People have new tools. Definitions of diplomacy and engagement are changing. It's very fast, and we are learning. We know how to engage. Things have changed. Much of the conversations still borrow from the last 20 years. I think we need to think afresh. We do need to think afresh. And I want to assure you, Muwaffaq, we do have the attention and the power of the people worldwide. And it is unstoppable. And the train has left the station. And the people of the world cannot unsee what they have seen. The genocide cannot be undone. And what is coming forward is to make sure that we ally all the stars, help Trump keep his attention and make sure his attention is in the right arena, not in the wrong arena, and make sure that all the other stars are aligning, including a regional coordination, making sure that the upcoming elections in Israel, and remember we have 2 million Palestinians in Israel, to take part in that process and make sure that perhaps in the coming 2 to 3 years, we may actually have a window for establishing a state of Palestine. I just want to end by saying this. Justice requires justice for the victims, requires political resolution, and requires accountability. And here, the centrality of the issue of accountability, because for us, the Palestinians, accountability is also deterrence. How do we deter the next genocide? How do we make sure that our children shall never ever be slain again? It is by holding those criminals accountable. That's why, as much as the track in Washington is important, as much as all what we discussed here is important, the track in the ICC, by the way, I was the ambassador to Washington, as you know, and I was kicked out of Washington, and the embassy or the mission was shuttered down because we joined the ICC, because the state of Palestine ratified the Rome Statute. So we paid the price knowingly that the importance and the significance of the track of accountability is important. All this is now coming together with all the intimidations of the US against the judges. All this is coming together. Let's keep going, and I am more optimistic than I am a pessimist at this point in time.
Don't feel bad about being kicked out of Washington, Ambassador Zumlot. If President Sharak can make it to the White House, you can come back. If President Sharak can make it to the White House, you can come back easily. Don't feel bad about it for now. Dr. H.E.Mr, please.
My point here is that demanding a change in the Palestinian establishment, Palestinian administration, is an important point. We should expect elections in Israel at the end, near the end of next year. I believe the Palestinian side should or would do the same. Elections that produces the leadership that the Palestinian people would agree on. At that point, the point raised by President Trump in his 20 points will be met. The Palestinians have chosen their government, new leadership. This new leadership will be definitely commissioned to negotiate and to accept or to reject. So, in as much as the Israelis will decide on their government, the Palestinians should do the same, and during the next year. The year 2026 should not pass without elections in Palestine.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moussa. Mike, please, your quick final remarks.
I think it's fair to say I have a different perspective than everybody else up here. But maybe there's one thing that we could all agree on, maybe, and that is that anything that we might want to see for the Israelis and the Palestinians requires, as the first step, Hamas to be disarmed. If Hamas is not disarmed, then nothing is going to move forward. As I expressed, I think there's a little bit of doubt in my mind whether a process has been set in place that is actually going to achieve that. It might. It might. But I think that that is the one thing that we should all want to see happen. Because until that organization is thoroughly defeated, we're going to be mired in this conflict in the form that it currently exists.
Thank you. Dr. Salam, please, 1 second. Allow me to ask Ramadan to follow up on this quickly with his final remarks. He said Hamas must disarm. So can you make sure your final remarks would address his question, please? And then I will ask Dr. Paul Salam to end the session.
ليس لأن الولايات المتحدة تقول ذلك. هذه ذريعة إسرائيلية. لم يبقى لحماس أي سلاح يمكن أن يشكل خطرا على إسرائيل، ولذلك نعتبر هذه ذريعة لتعطيل حلول سياسية. فلسطينيا أقول لا مكان لحماس في مستقبلنا. الشعب الفلسطيني، لأن الشعب الفلسطيني يريد ذلك وليس للولايات المتحدة أو إسرائيل. الرجال الأقوياء الشرفاء هم الذين يصنعون السلام، وليس في تل أبيب لا شرفاء ولا رجال. الولايات المتحدة مطلوب منها جزء من العدل لكي تكون حاضرة. نحن العرب اليوم نحن الأقوى ونحن الأغنى ونحن الأعرق ونحن لدينا قدرة على تغيير السياسات الأمريكية، ونجحت القادة العرب. لذلك أقول الشعب الفلسطيني بصموده سوف يفشل كل مشاريع نتنياهو، وسوف كما يطالب بنزع سلاح حماس، نحن نطالب بالتخلص من اليمين المتطرف في إسرائيل. لا نريد أن نخاطب هؤلاء، لا نريد أن يكون جيراننا بهذا الإجرام. الشعب الفلسطيني صامد وباقي على أرضه. الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية هي اللاعب الأساسي في العملية السلمية، وبتقديري أن الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية يجب أن تمتثل لرغبة العالم بتحقيق وتفعيل حل الدولة الفلسطينية.
Thank you, Ramadan. Mike, the English translation doesn't sound as harsh as when he said it in Arabic. So, Dr. Salam, please.
لا أنا الحقيقة قلت كل اللي بدي أقوله، بركي نختم بكلام زميلي ونرجع نشكر اللي نظموا هذا اللقاء، وبشكرك موفق، وإلى لقاء آخر في طنجة.
Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking our great speakers, and thank you for attending. Thank you.